Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Lopez, Dr. Ann Lopez, who needs no introduction. To those of us who live in the Monterey Bay area, we just call her Dr. Ann. For those of you from outside these parts, Dr. Ann earned her PhD in environmental studies just north of us at UC Santa Cruz. Anybody from Santa Cruz? Woo! She is the founder and executive director of the Center for Farmworker Families. Upon receiving one of her many awards and honors, she was described as an unyielding force of improving the lives of farm workers and their families. So who better than her to talk about the environmental racism that is happening in our communities? So with that, I want to introduce one of the judges, Dr. Ann Lopez.
I'm delighted to be with you this afternoon, and I don't know how this happened, but look at this beautiful day we got.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. So when I did my PhD, I studied the impact of the North American Free Trade Agreement on the small farms in Mexico, small producer farms and subsistence farms of Mexico. And I was appalled by what I found. I was amazed that I was a citizen of a country that would create so much pain and suffering in another country adjacent to our own borders and force people off their land to migrate in order to survive, not for a better life, just to survive. And so during that period of time in the late 90s, literally millions of these subsistence and small producer farm workers had to abandon their farms and move north to become farm workers in California's corporate agribusiness. Now this structure is a perfect setup for growers and people that own the farms here, because they've always looked for a docile workforce that won't make waves, that won't criticize, that won't in any way do anything other than pick crops and make profits for them. And so what we have then today is the result of this trade policy with millions of undocumented farm workers. An estimate I heard recently for Watsonville is that 83% of farm workers are undocumented, meaning they basically have no civil rights whatsoever, and all a grower has to do is threaten them if they complain or if they don't work hard enough or whatever, and they could be blacklisted or deported, and the last thing they want is their families torn apart and half the family sent to Mexico and half here. So the estimate I've read is that we have about 11 million undocumented workers in this country, the country at large, that have resulted from NAFTA, and prior to NAFTA we had 4 million. So you can see it had quite an impact. And what it's done is created this silent, fearful farm labor workforce. I call them modern day slaves. They have no rights. There are no civil rights for farm workers. They can't even learn what they're being exposed to in the field. I've asked them, ask your foreman, ask your supervisor, what are you using in the field when I'm working? And they tell me that the foreman always says the same thing. Go back to work, it's all safe, it doesn't matter. And we know that that's false, so they can't even know what they're exposed to. Their civil rights are consistently violated. It's not only with pesticides, but it's with issues like heat, for instance. Last August, a group of farm workers called me from the field saying that the temperature was ranging from 101 to 108. People were fainting, and the supervisor would not let them go. and which is of course against the law. Another time a woman called me and sobbing, saying that she had recently been sexually assaulted in the field. And these things go on all the time. The estimate I read is 60% of farm worker women are groped, raped in the field, had slurs thrown at them, sexual slurs thrown at them, etc. So I'd like to give you some, I like this one. I think this is so important. In the zip codes that encompass Santa Cruz County, the 95076 zip code, which is this one, stands out as one of the few in the county that have a majority Latinx population of 70.7%. A full 60% of all Latinx residents in all the Santa Cruz County zip codes live within the 95076 zip, which includes Watsonville, while only 12.6% of the county's white population lives there. However, 98.5%, that's 168.9 of 171.4 pounds of pesticides associated with childhood leukemia, and 95.2%, or 2,113 of 2,220 pounds of pesticides tied to childhood brain cancer were applied in 2019 in the 95076 zip code alone. This is pure environmental racism. There's no other way you could describe this. This would never happen in North County. There would be uproars about it. And for here, there's nothing. I think farm workers are viewed as somehow expendable. So I am sick and tired personally of meeting families regularly that have children with leukemia, brain cancer, bone cancer. In fact, just a month ago, one farm worker sent me a picture of her daughter just before she died of bone cancer at the age of 13. Let's see, ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, developmental disorders. These are children. Why in the world is this allowed in a so-called civilized society? The value of the People's Tribunal to me is to see how pervasive this is. This is not just a localized issue. There were groups of farm workers from all over the state coming to express the same dissatisfaction. And I just hope at some point a lawsuit is filed that will hold these corporations or these agencies like the DPR and the environmental protection. What protection? Environmental protection agencies accountable for either change their name or make them accountable, but their name does not reflect what they do.